Hello, and welcome to a review from the Retro Indie Gamer. Today, I'm kicking off my series on the best games on the Atari 2600. Now, I am going to be taking a different approach than I did the last series, in which I had about 5 games an episode, except for the last one, in which I put the worst game in its own video. This time, I'm only going to be doing 1, possibly 2 games per episode. Now, the only reason I do 2 is if the 2 games are related somehow. And there are a couple games on my list of the best games that are connected in some way. Like, for example, the ones in this video. This video I'm covering Ms. Pac-Man and Jr. Pac-Man for the Atari 2600. I know some of you are wondering, wait, didn't they already screw up Pac-Man on the Atari? They did, but they redeemed themselves with Ms. Pac-Man and Jr. Pac-Man. Now, just watch.
Junior Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man were unauthorized sequels to Pac-Man that were made by Midway. Ms. Pac-Man in 1981 and Junior Pac-Man in 1983, both of which were ported to the Atari 2600, with Ms. Pac-Man being ported to the Atari 2600 in 1983, and Junior Pac-Man in 1986. Now, how does the Atari port of Ms. Pac-Man differ from the original Pac-Man on the Atari? Well, look at it. This actually looks like the arcade version. Look, there's Ms. Pac-Man, who actually looks like Ms. Pac-Man. There's the bouncing fruit that look like fruit. And the ghosts don't flicker. Or at least not as much as they did in Pac-Man on the Atari. Now, this one's actually good, especially compared to the other Pac-Man, and easily one of the most faithful arcade adaptations that was on the 2600. Now, the only thing this is missing are the intermission scenes, but that's probably because this is still the Atari 2600, and home consoles had not yet caught up with arcades, as the arcade machines were able to do more than, say, the Atari 2600. And look, the ghosts, they had the colors of the ghosts exactly right as well. I mean, they did a really good job with this particular game. Look, here's the next one. And this one actually feels like you're playing Ms. Pac-Man. Sure, the graphics might look a little blocky, but it's only because it's the Atari 2600. This is still a very great game. And definitely a game I'd recommend getting for the Atari 2600. Look, there's a strawberry. I mean, this definitely is superior to the other one, which the fruits were square. Were little squares in the center. Now let's see, how far can I get in this game? Ah, darn it. Now start again. Oh, they didn't have the opening. Oh, they actually have the opening scene from the arcade version. That is actually pretty interesting, or at least something very similar to it. Let's see, Ms. Pac-Man. Now let's try again. Now this game's actually pretty addicting. The other Pac-Man I turn off in like 5 minutes. Or, okay, more like a few seconds. Now this one, there's actually a fun factor to this particular version of Ms. Pac-Man. And it's interesting how a system as primitive as the Atari 2600 was able to perfectly capture the essence of the arcade game. Now let's see, well... Now, as I said, the only thing that's really omitted from the arcade version are the intermission scenes, and every maze lasts about 2 stages. And this one's also a little bit easier than the arcade Ms. Pac-Man. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. it's still fun as hell. I mean, it's still Ms. Pac-Man. The game that was the Midway Pac-Man game that was so popular that it was eventually adopted by Namco itself. I mean, they had to when it was actually more popular than the original Pac-Man. After saying this, I want to know what they were smoking when they made the Atari Pac-Man port. Because it is clear that the system was more than capable of making a faithful adaptation of Pac-Man. If they can do this when this one did more complicated stuff than the original Pac-Man. Ah, darn. Another thing, definitely, yeah. And I definitely like how ghosts are actually decent size and they don't flicker. Oh, here's a blue stage. Yeah, and this one's just like the other ones. 2 stages, you go to the next one, which I think is green. And after that, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far in the game yet. Now on to Junior Pac-Man. Now this is Junior Pac-Man, which, and I'm sorry I got the date mixed up, was actually released in 1984 on the Atari. And it is a pretty faithful adaptation of the arcade version. Now there's Junior Pac-Man in all his animations, and there are all the ghosts. And this has the feel of the arcade version. I mean, the only thing that I see so far is different from the arcade version is that I remember the initial stage in the arcade version being blue. Now, this game definitely has a greater challenge of Junior Pac-Man than both Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man. In my opinion, it's probably the best of the three on the Atari 2600. Yeah, one of the best things about this is how big the mazes are, as they are not all contained to a single screen. But I believe it's also the same in the arcade version. Okay, I'm right away from the ghosts, Ah, darn it. I like how they have all the animations here. And like I said, this game is hard. And I mean hard. And another nice thing is the power pellets are not in the corners like they were in the other games. They're actually placed in pretty good points throughout the stage. Now let's see if I can get the fruit. Let's see if I can get the fruit this time. Oh, there's the bicycle. In this one, you have things like bicycles, cats, and toys instead of fruit like in the other two. Then again, not everything in Ms. Pac-Man was fruit. For example, one of the stages had pretzels. Yeah, and this one is incredibly faithful to its arcade counterpart. It definitely shows that it is one of the later games in the Atari 2600 library, as it was released in 1984. I find it interesting how the Atari suffered greatly during 1983 and 1984, and those years saw many of its best games. Then again, it also saw its worst games. And this game was released when the crash was at its all-time high. Now this is definitely my opinion, the best of the free Pac-Man games on the Atari 2600. And easily blows the other two out of the water, and definitely the original Pac-Man. Which proves that the original Pac-Man was rushed. I mean, if the Atari 2600 could handle both this and Ms. Pac-Man, as well as the Atari 2600 could, it's pretty clear that this system was able to handle Pac-Man. Now, I think there might have been some homebrew projects to make for more faithful adaptation of Pac-Man for the Atari, but either way, this is still a better game, and its difficulty is And one of the best things is how hard this thing is, especially compared to the other two. Well, that was my review of the other two Pac-Man games on the Atari 2600, Junior Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, which both get an A in my book. Well, until next time, in which I'm going to show more of the best games on the console. As it's definitely a nice thing to review all the good games, not just the bad ones. As the Atari had a great deal of good games too, which is probably why it lasted. Which is probably why it's had the longest lifespan of any console in history, lasting almost 14 years. Well, until next time, everybody. Bye.